All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting episode of D&D Deep Dive, the show where we dive deep into classes, subclasses, and other features of 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons to help you get the most out of your choices. So, today, we are going to be continuing along the PHB races, learning as much as we can and learning how to do interesting things. By going to the half-orc. Now, as a quick refresher, basically, every single race is going to have a few things when you are looking at it for character creation. Every race is going to have ability score increases. By taking that race, you get to increase certain ability scores that are related to things that race naturally does. You're also going to have age, alignment, size, and speed, which kind of give you an idea of how fast the race itself ages. The alignment is mostly useless at this point. There were guidelines when it was first published, and now Wizard of the Coast has kind of just actively said alignments based on race just don't really exist. Size is going to tell you not only the physical, like height, is going to be, but how much space you take up on the board. Most of them are medium, but we've done some small ones. And then speed is how fast you can move. And then a race will sometimes have dark vision. That either it has it or it doesn't, and then you will have your race specific traits. Now, some races have sub races, which basically means your ability score increase for the main race is only going to be half of it, and when you choose your subclass, you'll get the other half of it, and then each sub race will also have other racial traits. So that being said, let's look at the half-orc. Now, orcs have been a part of D&D, Orcs have been a part of D&D since its inception. They have always been kind of your generic bad guys. Orcs, goblins, kobolds. Those are, your general low-level monsters that you will deal with all the time. The half-orc was basically introduced to kind of let people play what are now considered quote-unquote monstrous races, where if you wanted to play a character that was not a part of general society that we think of, that's really where the half-orcs came from. And because they have such a deep history in Dungeons and Dragons, a lot of the abilities and everything are just stuff that you would normally see in an orc stat block, modified slightly to make up for the half other creature heritage, which for the most part, half orcs, most of the quote unquote half races are generally considered to be half human, half creature. So half orc is half human, half of orc. Half elf is half human, half elf. This has just kind of been the default throughout that, but more recently they've been adding options so that you can reflect maybe a half orc, half elf, or maybe half drow, half halfling or something. They've created some new things to make things a little more interesting. But let's dive into the half-orc itself. First things first, the half-orc does not have a subclass or sub-race in the PHB. There is a mark from Eberron that you can take, which basically acts as kind of a sub race. But as far as the PHB, half-orcs are that's what it is you are a half of a fork. So the ability score improvement are going to be the whole kit and caboodle for this. For the half-orc, your strength score increases by 2, and your constitution score increases by 1. Now, what I've done for every one of these is basically give you like the quote unquote perfect class. If you want your ability score increases to be super utilized by your class, you would choose the quote unquote perfect class. Now, as I've said before, this is not really a necessary thing. You can do really, really well and create very, very powerful characters that don't use either of your abilities to score in creases. D&D 5th edition is built to allow you to create quote unquote suboptimal characters that still work perfectly well. That being said, the Half-Orcs quote unquote perfect class is the Barbarian. We've talked about Barbarian quite a few times before in the racial things because they get bonuses from strength and they get bonuses from Constitution. The Barbarian, all of their extra rage damage only happens when you make a strength-based melee attack. So strength is one of their most important things. It makes them hit more often, it makes them hit harder, and that's what Barbarians do. Barbarian's unarmored defense lets you add your Constitution score to your AC. So having additional Constitution is very, very useful for a Barbarian. Not only that, but Barbarians are designed to take a lot of damage. They have the highest hit die in the game. So having a higher Constitution score also means they can just take more damage. Now, as we talk about this more, we will find out that there's more than just the ability score increase that makes Half-Orcs really popular Barbarians. But for right now, Strength and Constitution means that if you make a half-orc Barbarian, it's going to work very, very well. I myself have a Half-Orc Barbarian that I have played in the D&D Adventures Little League, and it is 100% a tribute to Grog from the first series of Critical Role. He even talks like him a wee bit. Yes, I know exactly how well Half-Orc Barbarians work because I have played one from level 1 to... I only got to level 4 with it because I didn't get to play it much. But yeah, they work very, very well. Now, that being said, there's a lot of other classes that you can do really, really well with. Strength can be incredibly useful for Paladins. Half-Orc Paladins are actually not uncommon at all. Seen as a lot of people, and we'll talk about some of the other race-specific features and traits they have that actually can make you being a paladin pretty good. Paladins use strength there to attack rolls, so that's great. And then charisma is their casting, and Half-Orcs are known to be intimidating, let's say. Which is a charisma-based skill. So, yeah, Half-Orc Paladins, not uncommon at all. Half-Orc Fighters. Again, Fighters can be built off of the idea of just having strength and going from there. Constitution is always going to be helpful no matter what class. So those three tend to be really, really popular. Now, with that, you can create some more interesting things, like a Half-Orc Cleric, especially if you go with something like the War Domain Cleric, where they are a more melee-focused Cleric. Half-Orcs can be great Clerics, because, again, the Constitution is going to mean that they can take a lot of hits, or they can take more hits than your average Cleric, which translates to them being much harder to kill, so that they can spend their time keeping the rest of your allies alive or bringing down hellfire. However you want to play your Cleric, a good strength score can be very, very useful. In addition to that, if you want to be a caster that can do some melee, things like a War Wizard, you can do a lot worse than going with a Half-Orc, because it'll give you the bonus to your strength. You will still need intelligence for your wizard, but that can be your 15 can be your intelligence. and then your 14 can be your strength, and you'll start off with a higher strength score than your intelligence, but you can very, very quickly, by level 4 actually, you can increase that up to a 16, and because it's a 15 instead of a 16, instead of just getting an ability score improvement, you can actually take a feat that increases your intelligence and gives you extra the things that are useful to you. So most people will not think of a half-orc wizard. They generally tend to think of half-orcs as stupid, and I really like the idea of going against type, even without using the modifications to ability score increases that Tasha introduced and the things like that. Like, you can use the base half-orc and create a really interesting, fun, but powerful wizard without too much difficulty. And having and using that feat at level 4 to increase your intelligence and give you something interesting to do really can expand your ability to play a just kind of really unique, interesting character. I'm really quickly just looking for something like Fey Touched, like really quick example. Fey Touched will allow you to increase your intelligence, and you get the Misty Step spell and one other first level spell of your choice. It's either divination or enchantment. Now, this just says a first level spell of your choice. It doesn't say which first level spell or anything like that, or from what class list you have to take for it. So doing something like Fey Touched for a wizard, first of all, gives you another spell with Misty Step, which is useful. And Fey Touch allows you to cast them like normal spells. But it's also going to give you another spell basically from any spell list. So if you really want to get creative with it, using something like Fey Touched can make for a really interesting half-orc wizard. So don't be afraid to go against type and go against the quote-unquote perfect class, because there's a lot of other cool stuff you can do with it. Age, alignment, size, speed. Age, half-orcs actually mature a little bit faster than humans. They're reaching adulthood around 14, compared to humans, which in D&D between 18 and 25 tends to be adulthood, quote-unquote. However, they age noticeably faster and rarely live longer than 75 years, whereas humans can get anywhere between 80 and 100 years old, 120 if you push it really far. Half-orcs are, burn a little bit brighter. They age a little bit faster, and that can be used as you role-play and things like that to go, well, yeah, I'm young, but I'm forced to mature much faster than other people because I'm going to be dead faster than everyone else. So, yeah, interesting stuff. Alignment, again, we don't really talk about it because it was a guideline back then and it's almost useless now. Size, they range from 5 feet to well over 6 feet to tall, which is actually relatively average for modern humans. The average human height, I believe, is 5'10 or 5'11 if you're male, and I think it's like 5... I have no idea what average female height is, to be perfectly honest. I'm actually going to look this up because it's and obviously different cultures actually have different average heights. Dear God, really? I can't even type. 5'4". Okay, so yeah, average male is about 5'10". Average female is about 5'4". So they're roughly the same size. One of the things they do mention here is they are slightly larger and bulkier. So kind of built like me. I'm 6'4". I'm very, very tall in general, but I'm also very wide, and that's not mentioning my weight, though I am very much overweight, I have a very wide frame. Even when I was in really, really good shape, I only weighed about 200, 205, which for someone my size is actually really good. But I was still very, very large. I have very broad shoulders. I have very big, thick bones. And so half orcs are going to be very similar to that. They're going to be bulkier. Their shoulders are going to be broader. Their hips may be broader as well, even for males, just because they are built a little bit more for physical activity, and having wider hips and being able to get a really strong base is beneficial for lifting things. Yeah, but size is medium, so unlike the short races that we've been talking about, you're just your regular old medium. And then your speed, base walking speed, is the 30 feet. Again, just like everyone else except for the short races, not a big deal. Half-orcs do have dark vision. Orcs themselves have dark vision, so half-orcs inherit the dark vision from their orc parent. Humans do not have dark vision, so it is nice. I've said this many times before. Dark vision is useful. It's not the be-all, end-all, but it is very useful. And that is the kind of general stuff. The specific things for the specific traits for the half-orc are as follows. First things first, you have menacing. Menacing, you gain proficiency in the intimidation skill. So the race itself, it doesn't give you a bonus to charisma, but it is already giving you a benefit to putting charisma as one of your higher scores. It's one of the reasons why half-orc paladins are not uncommon. The race already lends itself to having a charisma focus. Paladins are a charisma based class, at least for their spell casting, so it does make sense. It also can be fun, like the intimidation skill. I think a lot of people tend to, I guess, misunderstand it as anytime you use intimidation, you are doing something evil. And while, yes, if you are threatening to break someone's little legs, or you're being ruthless or something like that, that 100% is intimidation. However, you can intimidate someone in very, very different ways. Intimidation is a negotiation tactic. And there are ways to intimidate someone without being an evil person. Sometimes intimidation can simply be standing up taller than them. From my own experience being a bully magnet, in middle school and parts of high school, I was absolutely a bully magnet, and it was because of how I carried myself, to be 100% honest. I always walked around slunched. I had a big old backpack that I carried around, and I was always closed off and stuff like this. When I got to high school, we actually moved to a different school. And when I got to high school, within the first year or two, I can't remember exactly when, I started acting, and I started doing things like marching band and other little more physical things than I used to. And I learned how to carry myself properly. I learned how to sit up straight. I learned how to walk straight. I learned about body alignment and how to have good posture. And I was not a very confident person. I still am not, despite the fact that I make myself, I actively present an air of confidence because I'm incredibly unconfident in myself. But I was not a very confident person. I wouldn't make eye contact with people, and people bullied me. As soon as I raised my chest a little bit, started looking people in the eye, I stopped getting bullied. And I was actually even able to stand up to other bullies, which is an intimidation thing that no one would consider an evil move. But by simply walking up to someone and not pushing my chest out and bumping up against someone going, hey, if you just talk to him, you're going to have to go through me. But simply standing up, looking at someone and saying, you know what? I think this is a really bad idea, and I think you should go away. Some people might consider that more persuasion than intimidation, but it takes a very, very quick turn when someone goes, man, I'm going to beat the snot out of you, and you go, that would be a mistake. You need to walk away now. It's not an evil thing, but that is 100% an intimidation style posture. And so even the name here, menacing, kind of does make it sound like it's a more evil, chaotic style thing. But no, you can be a half-orc that simply is a very confident half-orc that decides that he knows exactly, he or she knows exactly what they can or can't do, and they're not going to back down. Simply the act of not backing down, not negotiating effectively, but basically just not giving up any ground to your opponent can be a very intimidating thing. And again, your DM may rule it differently. Like I said, a lot of DMs think of intimidation as, I'm going to break your legs. And I think just being more forceful, whereas persuasion in my mind is a little bit more of, let me work with you to come up to a solution. Intimidation is, let me tell you how this is going to go. In the most basic form. And it doesn't have to be evil. It doesn't have to be forceful. It just has to be confident. And so, yeah, menacing really, really lends itself to that. But again, don't be afraid to play a little bit against the type. You don't have to, threaten to kill everyone to get your intimidation rolls. You can simply sit there and go, no, we're not going to do that. And there's nothing you can do to make us. So, yeah. The next ability you get is called Relentless Endurance. And I will tell you right now, from playing a half-orc barbarian, this is by far one of the easiest things to forget. And I did, and it caused my character to die. Luckily enough, I had a very forgiving dungeon master that day. And when my turn came around, I went, oh shit. I have Relentless Endurance. I know I should have said it last time, but I completely forgot. Would you allow me to use Relentless Endurance so I don't fail my... so I'm not unconscious and therefore don't lose my character? And he was kind enough to let me do that. But the way Relentless Endurance works is when you're reduced to 0 hit points but not killed outright, you can drop to 1 hit point instead. You can't use this feature again until you finish a long rest. So it's a one and done thing, but it is a really, really useful one and done thing. Being able to stay conscious is always beneficial. Always, 100% of the time, it is useful. Because that means instead of having to roll a death save on your turn, you get to do anything. It could be downing a potion. It could be going and killing the other dude that's going to kill you the next time they get it to the turn. It could be running away so you can get to a place where you can be safe long enough so you can get healed by someone else. There's so many different things, but being conscious is super, super useful. And it's useful for every single class, no matter what. So, yeah. The next thing you get as a half-orc, and this is the thing that makes half-orc barbarians super, super deadly. It is called Savage Attacks. When most D&D players that know 5th edition pick a half-orc, they're picking it for Savage Attacks. Basically, when you score a critical hit with a melee weapon into the attack, you can roll one of the weapon's damage dice 1 additional time and add it to the extra damage of the critical hit. What this translates to is, let's say you're playing a half-orc barbarian. This is why they're so popular. And you're using a great axe. A great axe uses a d12 as their damage die. You hit, nat 20, critical hit. Normally, you would roll 2 d12 for the crit. A half-orc barbarian rolls 3 d12. You are now doing triple damage on your criticals instead of double. Now, the barbarian, as it gets higher, gets to roll additional weapon damage to the dice when they crit. I believe it's either 7 or 9, you get to add another one. So at that point, a half orc, a a a half orc barbarian is going to roll 4d6 instead of 3. Normally, for any other class at that level, if they were using a great axe, they would roll 2d6. The half orc barbarian rolls 4. Eventually, I believe they get at least one more. They roll 5d6 on a crit. And because of reckless attack, which allows them to effectively just give themselves advantage whenever they want, barbarians can crit a lot. So it works really, really well with savage attacks. It's also one of the reasons why so many barbarians use the great axe over the great sword, because the great sword gives you 2d6 the dice for your great sword attack, meaning you can only roll one of the weapon's damage dice. So for a normal crit with a greatsword, you would normally roll 4d6. A half orc would roll 5d6. A half orc barbarian that's a high enough level would roll 6d6, which is nice, but it's not quite as nice as adding an extra d12 versus an extra d6. Yeah, savage attacks is just super useful. Now, again, most people think of barbarian because you basically get to double dip with savage attacks and the barbarian criticals. However, it can be just as useful or even more useful to go the champion fighter route, specifically because champion fighters get critical hits on lower numbers. The big selling point for the champion fighter, which is probably the simplest class to play in the entire game, is that they can get a critical hit on a 19 or a 20, and eventually it goes down to an 18 or to 20 as they gain levels, which means you are getting a critical hit 15% of the time you roll. And if you can find ways to give yourself an advantage, whether that's through your allies setting up situations to give you an advantage, even doing something like finding a way to get the fairy fire spell so that you can just make people give you advantage and things like that. Like, there's a lot of different ways you can get advantage, and combining that with savage attacks and the things like that, you can create a very, very effective fighter. Now, we do have to mention this is only on melee weapon attacks. So this won't work for ranged attacks. This won't work for spell attacks. It has to be a melee weapon attack. So that does limit things a little bit and tends to make people who choose half-orcs go for more martial classes. Yeah, and then languages, they can speak, read, and write Common and Orc. Final thoughts on the half-orc. Half-orcs are fun. If you want to play a very physical-based class, you can have a ton of fun with a half-orc. The menacing, like I said, you can go just the route of me kill you if you no give me the things, but you can just as easily just go for a very, very confident, charismatic person that uses their charisma to tell people how things are going to go, as opposed to asking them or requesting from them. Relentless Endurance is useful for anything, and Savage Attacks makes half-orcs just this close to being broken. The crazy amounts of damage you can see half-orc barbarians doing is just nuts. Like I said, barbarians, half-orcs make fantastic barbarians. Champion fighters are really, really good. And clerics can be really fun to play with, in addition to doing something like a war wizard. if you want to play a little bit off to the type. So anyway, that is going to be all for me today. As always, if you enjoyed this, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon, and turn notifications on so you never miss any of these videos in the comments down below. What weird class would you want to try playing a half-orc as? Maybe a half-orc artificer to really mess with people's minds? Let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, again, that is all for me today, and I will see you guys next time. All right? Bye-bye.